let's jump right into the live internet studies, which is still an hour and a half long, 2 segments. First segment, Eschatology, a biblical study of end-time events. Second study, 30 minutes, a Trinitarian response to biblical Unitarianism. We're going to be probably trying to wrap up both of those tonight, at least the topics that we're in, so we can start jumping into new topics. That's if I stick to script. We'll see what happens. In the eschatology study, which we're going to start with right now, we're currently working our way through topic 14, like you can see on your screen right now, Mystery Babylon, discussion part 2. We are in an extended excursus. We're working from the thesis put out by a gentleman by the name of Chris White. You can see the book on your screen right now, Mystery Babylon, When Jerusalem Embraces the Antichrist, an exposition of Revelation 17 and 18. It is putting forth a thesis that Mystery Babylon in the book of Revelation is not Rome, is not Mecca, is not rebuilt Babylon, is not even New York City, but is instead the end-time Jerusalem that goes into Daniel's 70th week when the time comes. Let me jump right into my study and work my way down through these last 2 points in my excursus that I wrote. Topographical transformation and the physical death of Jerusalem following Chris White. So now we've moved from the baptism theme and the death of the covenantal identity of Mystery Babylon. We're going to move now into the physical destruction that she's going to undergo. A significant objection to identify Mystery Babylon with eschatological Jerusalem, many say, is the assumption that Jerusalem's present geographical configuration must survive into the Messianic kingdom. Many argue that the sort of annihilation described in Revelation 17 and 18, where we got fire, collapse, desolation, abandonment. Also, if we tie in the Daniel passage, Daniel 9:26, says that there will be a flood. The city will be destroyed with a flood. And if that wasn't just first century language, if it carries over into the second part of the prophecy where we got near and far, and if it turns out, it's obviously Jerusalem being spoken of in the Daniel prophecy. That's my point, is there's no question that it's Jerusalem that's going to suffer under the flood there. Is it a flood of military destruction, right? The soldiers destroying the temple and Jerusalem being sacked in the 130s. Is that the flood it's talking about? Well, that could be right. That could be true. But it could be a water flood, right? It could be water. Lots of possibilities there, near far prophecy. So Revelation 17 and 18 portray the major themes of the day of the Lord, which is destruction by fire. So we read about that, the fire, the collapse, the desolation, the abandonment, and all of these things would, as I say, make the city unusable for the future reign of the Messiah. Either way you look at it, even if Mystery Babylon is not eschatological Jerusalem, if they are not the same city, let's just say it is New York or something like that, and Antichrist doesn't choose Jerusalem as his place to set up his 8th beast empire. Let's suppose it is that. So Mystery Babylon turns out to be New York or one of the other candidates. There's still going to be a lot of heavy destruction in Jerusalem, right? So I go on to say that my response for this next section that we're going to be reading follows the line of argument articulated by Chris White, which is Scripture explicitly predicts massive geological upheavals in Jerusalem during the day of the Lord that will radically reshape the physical landscape. So let's turn into that right now and see what we can make of it. This expectation, I go on to say, it's not speculative. Several Old Testament passages directly anticipate cataclysmic transformations. Let's read some points related to what the Old Testament part of our Bible anticipates the day of the Lord is going to do in terms of destruction to certain parts of Jerusalem. First, let's start with Zechariah 14:10. Let me back up. 14:4 through 10. I say that this describes the Mount of Olives splitting east to west, forming an enormous valley, and Jerusalem being lifted up and reconfigured. We know that this is also the passage where Yeshua's feet will touch down on the Mount of Olives. Interestingly, there's language in that part of the Bible that talks about Yeshua fighting for Jerusalem, and yet at the same time, first, he has to make a way for people to be able to escape. Escape what? Right? You have to think about, is there going to be a battle going on there at that moment? I believe there will. So, and I don't think, and it might be the Battle of Armageddon. The timing could be right around that time frame where it's Armageddon type language or timing near the very end of the 70th week. So Yeshua physically splitting the Mount of Olives, allowing a way for his people to escape so that he can do battle with his enemies that have gathered in the area of Israel. I don't think the Battle of Armageddon is going to take place in Jerusalem. Don't get me wrong. What I mean is he allows people in Jerusalem to escape so then he can turn and go do battle at Armageddon, which is not in Jerusalem. But either way, Zechariah 14 then describes massive geographical changes that, as I say in my notes here, the land's future shape bears little resemblance to its present form. After it suffers this destruction, it's going to have to be reformed, is my point. And perhaps that is why John sees a new Jerusalem eventually come down to join what should be reformed at Jerusalem near the beginning of the millennium, at least according to my reckoning. Isaiah 29:6 speaks of Jerusalem being visited by the Lord with thunder and earthquake and great noise. The book of Revelation, in the bowl judgments, the seventh bowl judgment, if I remember, is the greatest earthquake the earth has never known. And there might be hyperbole in there where it talks about all the mountains are moved, no island will be found, things like that. But if we take any of that seriously, that language, then we're still talking about enormous geographical changes to planet Earth that will need repairing as we go into the millennium. And I think that's what the new heaven and new earth, I like to call it a reformed heaven and earth, are speaking of in the book of Revelation. Ezekiel 38:19 and 20 prophesies a global earthquake in which, quote, every wall will fall to the ground, end quote. Again, I don't know if that's just prophetic overstating, what I call prophetic hyperbole. Sometimes God, in order to get his point across, will use what looks like overstatements, and we're going to get into that a little later on into this excursus, so don't get confused. Don't worry if you're a bit confused right now. And I say in my notes, if this includes Jerusalem, we're talking about all this destruction, then the city's entire man-made structure will collapse and it's going to need to be rebuilt. And so what's the big deal if Mystery Babylon is end-time Jerusalem and she suffers that destruction? God's going to have to rebuild either way. So it's not a big deal. Micah 1:3-4 depicts the Lord descending in judgment, causing the mountains to melt and split. Again, all of these passages are Day of the Lord passages, as far as I can tell, and they're often cast in the near aspect of either destruction of a Babylon or a Tyre or a Nineveh or some other wicked city that God laid judgment to at that time, and where it became a sort of a shadow of the Day of the Lord. The greater Day of the Lord activity will take place inside of Daniel's 70th week. That's the pre-wrath model that I'm holding to. So I go on to say in my notes, all of these passages, the ones that we're looking at, they indicate that Jerusalem's topography will undergo extreme seismic and tectonic upheaval. The city's current physical contours, like its hills, valleys, and built environment, they won't survive. They won't survive. So let's keep going. I say in my excursus here, moreover, Jerusalem's devastation under the Antichrist intensifies this particular picture. The city will be overrun, set ablaze, depopulated, and ravaged by divine plagues. Read the bowl judgments. Go to Revelation and start about chapter 15 there, I believe, and read 15 and 16. I think those are where you'll get most of the bowl judgments. If not, start way back in chapter 8 with the trumpet judgments and just work your way all the way to about chapter 16. Some are like that. It's chapter 16, 17, somewhere in that location of the book of Revelation. So when Revelation adds that the city will be utterly burned with fire, it is describing an outcome consistent with the prophetic literature in the Tanakh. So we don't have a problem with that. I go on to say in my notes, thus, the destruction of Mystery Babylon is not incompatible with Jerusalem's later role. It is the necessary precursor to her transformation. Physical death precedes physical rebirth. The city's physical annihilation clears the ground for the Messianic Jerusalem described in Ezekiel 40 to 48. A Jerusalem whose dimensions and elevation require a radically altered terrain. All right, let's keep reading. This topographical renewal, I say, beautifully complements the theological pattern that I've proposed. Just as Jerusalem's corrupted identity must die for her redeemed identity to emerge, her corrupted topography must give way to the restructured, elevated, sanctified geography of the Messianic kingdom. The spiritual and physical dimensions of Jerusalem's death and resurrection, they mirror each other. So, in this combined model, my theological hypothesis and White's geological argument, the eschatological logic becomes elegant and complete. And here it is. Jerusalem dies as Mystery Babylon, both spiritually and physically. She rises as the redeemed city of the kingdom. She's glorified as the New Jerusalem in eternity. See how it all works together? Each phase, I say in my notes here, fulfills a biblical pattern already established in personal regeneration and covenant transformation.